After you're finished writing your environmental controversy paper, doing the presentation is pretty easy. Now, I know you guys might be worried about a presentation, but I promise you that most of my students in previous semesters actually like the presentation format because it's a lot easier than maybe what you've had in other classes. So I'm going to open up the instructions worksheet and scroll down to the presentation area. So the type of presentation you guys will be doing is something called a pachachka, or just because of the way it's spelled, a pechakucha. It's actually a really cool presentation type. Some people refer to it as a speed talk, but it is an automatically timed PowerPoint presentation. There are 10 slides. Each slide is 18 seconds, meaning it's 180 seconds total, which means it's 3 minutes. You guys do not need to time it. PowerPoint will automatically advance each slide. You don't need to push buttons, you don't need to do anything. What you do need to do is practice. Once you've made that presentation, it's actually kind of easy from there because PowerPoint advances the slides anyway. So as long as you practice, you're going to be golden. Now I'm going to give you some tricks and tips in this video by first giving you a presentation example, one that I created just to kind of show you what this presentation looks like. And then I'm going to kind of go back and touch on some different things so that you can prepare for your own presentation. I will say on Blackboard, if we go down to the presentation rough draft, you will see the presentation template. I'll talk about that soon. And then the presentation example, that's the one that I'm about to give. So we'll talk about those things and then I'll come back to the actual assignments so that you guys kind of know what you need to submit and when. All right, so hopefully this advances all right. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a practice presentation. If you look over on the left-hand side, it is 10 slides long. I chose the environmental controversy of climate change. This is not one that you guys get to choose, mainly because we spend an entire unit talking about climate change. So you guys don't need to do this topic because we talk about it for like 3 weeks. All right. Hello, my name is Kirsten Newtoff, and today I'm going to be talking about climate change. And climate change is really dependent or a consequence of the amount of fossil fuels that we're using. As you can see in this picture, this is what Earth looks like at night all lit up, and we're using fossil fuels to do something like that. Now, the whole source of climate change actually goes back to the carbon cycle. So there's carbon found in our fossil fuels, such as oil, coal, and natural gas. And when those fossil fuels are burned, because they are carbon-based, they release carbon dioxide. That's just a fact of life. You burn something with carbon in it, it's going to create carbon dioxide. The way this relates to climate change is that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. Greenhouse gases are designed to hold in heat. So as we increase greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, we're going to be increasing the temperature of Earth. Now, some people argue that it's just a natural cycle, and they're not entirely wrong. If we look at the past 800,000 years, carbon dioxide's fluctuated a lot, but as we can see recently, it's going higher than we've ever seen before. So some of it's natural, but a lot of it's due to humans. Now, the reason this matters, and some of the downsides of climate change, is that it affects humans directly. We have more extreme storms, and because we have more extreme storms, we're paying a lot for infrastructure. More drought and more flooding can really affect agriculture and food resources. And outside of humans, it's also affecting organisms. Here's the stereotypical picture of a polar bear on a small piece of ice, so they're losing their habitat in the Arctic. But even things like insects, they emerge earlier, they last longer, and a lot of insects like mosquitoes can carry diseases that harm humans and other organisms alike. But there's another part of that argument too. You know, if the reason climate change is happening is because oil and gas and other fossil fuels provide a lot of money for our government and for our economy. And this is really important for really us as humans surviving. If we look at mining as a percent of how much money our country makes, about 10% of all of our money comes from just mining these different ores and fossil fuels. So we're making a lot of money using this kind of technology. But one of the counter arguments is, well, what about the workers? right? We have all these coal workers, all these oil rig workers. If we move away from those, we're going to lose those jobs. We're going to lose those industries. And although that's true, we can say that about a lot of things in our past. We don't really have, people who are working on primitive technologies. But what we can do to be mindful of these industries is retrain those workers for fields that produce renewable energy. We still need a workforce for them. Thanks for listening to my talk. So there you go, right? That was 3 minutes long, and that was it. I told you guys a little bit of information about climate change. You guys are writing a 2 to 3 page paper. It'll be pretty easy for you guys to come up with a 3-minute presentation. So there's a couple of different things that I want to point out. So the first one I'll point out is one of those files that's on Blackboard is the template. You don't have to use the template, but I would highly recommend that you do. The only thing the template has is one, I do have a couple different notes about you should change things or what you shouldn't change. But at the bottom of each of these slides, you notice there's a black bar. You may have noticed that when I was talking, and I'll go ahead and open one of these slides, that as I was talking, this bar was fading away. This bar is specifically timed to last 18 seconds long. So it's essentially a countdown bar of how much time you have left on this slide. And that might help you pace yourself a little bit better. So on the template, I have that black bar. The template also has those 10 slides. And the last thing the template has is the slides are currently managed so that they flip every 18 seconds. If you start making your own PowerPoint and things are getting confusing, or maybe the timings aren't working, just to show you how to change those timings, you want to go to transitions, because we're talking about the transition from one slide to another slide. And on the far right, there's this advanced slide, meaning how do you make it go to the next slide? What is crucial to have checked is this after box, and then you want to change it to 18 seconds. So this is saying after 18 seconds, go ahead and transition or move to the next slide. If you look at all of the slides, you can see they all have this 18 seconds timer on it. So if for some whatever reason you lose them or something happens, that's how you reset it. But otherwise, you can delete everything on here. Now, something you may have noticed about my PowerPoint is that some of my slides were exactly the same. I still have 10 slides, but for example, on this slide, I knew I wanted to talk about it for longer than 18 seconds. So what I did is I literally duplicated the slide. So you can duplicate slides by right-clicking and then clicking on duplicate, and it makes an exact copy of it. They each last 18 seconds, but it's the same exact slide so that I can talk about it for a little bit longer. Now just make sure if you do start duplicating slides, you still need to have 10 slides total. And you can see I actually did that in a couple of places. Something else to keep in mind, you do not need to cite your sources. I have your papers, I know what your sources are. So your very last slide should not be the end, questions, citations, or anything. We want your 10 slides to have information on it. Now you can still have an intro slide, but keep in mind if you only have your title and your name and you don't know what else you're going to talk about, this is going to be a very boring slide. Let me give you an example. Hi everyone, my name is Kirsten Newtoff, and today I'm going to be talking about climate change and the pros and cons of climate change. So the carbon cycle, etc. So you see how I had that really long, awkward pause? Just because your intro slide might not have a lot on it, that doesn't mean you can't start talking about something. For me, I used it as a segue to talk about lighting and the use of electricity, and electricity using fossil fuels being our source of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases. So just keep this in mind, particularly with your intro slide, because I see a lot of students who are just like, okay, I'll talk for 5 seconds, and then I'm going to sit here and wait. It's really awkward, so I would avoid doing that. Something else, you want lots of pictures or diagrams or graphs or what have you. There should be very little text on your slides. You don't need note cards, you don't need a whole piece of paper to write it down. You guys just wrote 2 to 3 pages of this information. You should know it by now. This isn't to say you can't use words. You totally can. You can even have some bullet points on here. I would recommend having 15 or less words on a slide, and the less the better. And a lot of students ask, well, can I use note cards? You can, but do know there's a penalty for that, because I want to know that you know your information. I don't know what you're going to say, so if you completely miss something you want to talk about, that's fine. I'm not going to know. So as you can see, I use lots of pictures, and I'm using the pictures to jog my memory. Like, oh, polar bears losing their habitat, and I can see that in this picture. And oh, mosquitoes, well, I know mosquitoes have disease. You also make sure that you're being balanced. Like, you shouldn't have 5 slides of intro and then 1 slide on everything else. So you see, for me, I had, well, I guess 4 slides on intro, 2 slides why we should change, 2 slides why we shouldn't change, and 2 slides of my opinion and kind of how can we address some of those issues. I think that's pretty much it as far as tips for the actual presentation itself. So let me talk about some deadlines that would be coming up. So just like the paper, you can turn in a presentation rough draft. I'll give you feedback on it if I think you need more pictures or you should rearrange things. So I'll help you with that. Also, which isn't listed down here, but listed up here, if you get really nervous in front of groups, you are welcome to present just to me on Monday. So let me backtrack. Your rough draft is due Friday of spring break if you want to turn it in. On Monday, during the day, you can practice your presentation if you'd like to. It'll be just me. Swing by my office and then we'll go to the SLC and practice in one of their rooms. You can make any last minute changes. I'll give you feedback. And then Monday evening, I'd like you to submit the final draft of your presentation. I will go ahead and make sure that all the timings are correct. So if they somehow got lost or something happened, I'll fix them. Don't worry. But I do want you to turn these in by 7 p.m. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to download all of the files and then I'm going to save them onto a thumb drive so that you guys don't need to email it to yourself, bring thumb drives, anything like that. So at 7 p.m. I'm going to download all of them, put them on my thumb drive, and then starting on Tuesday, we're going to do our presentations. I'll talk about it more in class, but presentations are kind of volunteer based. So if you're like, oh, I'm going first, you need to get there first. So you can't email me tomorrow and be like, I want to go first in 3 weeks. That morning, I'm going to have a list on the board and you can write your name anywhere on that list. I think that's pretty much it. Once you turn in your presentation final draft, I'll actually be grading you guys as you give your presentations in class. And then your last assignment for this project would be the reflection. It's just a couple of questions asking about how the project went. Really, as long as you answer all of the questions, you'll get all the points for it. If you guys have any questions about this project, definitely ask me, and particularly ask me in class because some of your other classmates may have similar questions. So with that, good luck, and let me know if you need any help.